Hello, my name is Sylvester, working with Foundation Zambia and a trainer in Foundation Zambia with in charge of the groups in the communities in Mkushi and Serenje. Altogether there are 50. So here at Foundation Zambia, we see compost making as God's solution to the various challenges that the farmers are facing with their soils. Over the years, the farmers have used chemical fertilizers, which of course is quick in boosting the crop, but having a bearing on the long term on the soils, because the soils become acidic and therefore crops do not grow very well. And we've realized that making compost from the various residues that we have, like green material and dry material, grasses and manure from cows, has been helpful to make compost and be able to bring back life into the soils. And so we see compost as a solution to the costs also of the fertilizers, the rising costs of the fertilizers, which are now costing way above 500 to 600 per 50 kg bag. And if you made a compost, that should be able to cover about 50 by 50 of an area with one compost of 1.5 by 1.5, which will be able to give life to the soil. Above all, the compost that we make helps in retaining the moisture in case there's a drought, and that helps the farmer to still harvest the crop that they have planted. So it takes about 8 weeks to be able to be ready, and in that after it's ready, after 8 weeks, then it can be used in their fields of the farmers. So to make a thermal compost, you need some materials, and one of the materials that we need is dry material. First, you need to put together your dry materials. These dry materials can come from grass, dried grass, or leaves, the soya residues or groundnut residues. These are part of the dry materials that we can use. Then you also need to mobilize in the green material. It will be anything that still has chlorophyll. I mean green in terms of grass, in terms of any weed that is green around, can be put together as the second material that is required. Then you need some small sticks or stovers from chicken. From maize. That could be used also into that process. And then we need water. There must be enough water to be able to make a thermal compost. Then from water, we also need manure itself, cow dung, or is it goat droppings, is it chicken droppings, just the manure from those animals. So when these are put together in big quantities, then we can start to be able to make the compost. So we have a heap of cow dung here, which is being prepared for making compost. Yeah, so we have dry leaves here, which is a second ingredient or material that is required to make compost. Usually it is easy to collect the dry leaves, I think, in winter, when leaves are falling off from the trees. You can start to gather them and put them together from your garden, from your trees around the yard. Start heaping them together before you can start to make the compost. So this is green material. It has been cut while it's green, and so it can still be used as green material. It can be used as green material because the chlorophyll is still there. It has not gone off. It still remains, it still has the contents of green material. The chlorophyll is still there. So it can, when you are making your compost for green material, even if you cut it as it is green, and within a month you still heap it, it will still represent the green material, because the green component into it is still there and it can still be used. But you can as well collect the actual green materials. If you want to make it the same day, you can pick up some green materials and use it. So the residues from groundnuts, after you've removed your groundnuts, can work as nitrogen source. The they can stand for nitrogen source, because a thermocompost requires nitrogen, and you can get it from the groundnut shells, or you can get it from the groundnuts leftovers. That is the leaves and the other things that have been left over from groundnuts. It can be used as nitrogen source to make your thermocompost. Or it can come in as dry material if it has dried for a long time. So in both ways, it can be able to fit in. Nitrogen source is very important, and for a thermocompost, we get it either from any nitrogen crop. Like for instance, soybeans. After you have harvested your soybeans, the residues that remain have got nitrogen in them, because usually that's a nitrogen fixing crop, and therefore it always has a higher content of nitrogen. Also, the nitrogen source can come from the cow dung. So if you don't have the cow dung and you only have the residues from soybeans and also groundnuts, you can still make your compost even without the cow dung or the chicken manure, because the nitrogen can be got from either of the cow dung or the residues from groundnuts and soya. So the other ingredient is water. You need about 4 to 5 grams of water to make your compost, and then the compost will be ready. So these are the ingredients that we need to make compost. So here you can see one compost that is already about 6 or so weeks, and it's almost getting ready. But the other few composts there are already ready for use, and they can be used in the field. So we will now see how to make a compost step by step. So we've already talked about the ingredients for making the thermocompost. Now we are on site. We want to run you through step by step how to make this thermocompost. The first thing that you need to have is a measuring tape, because you are going to measure for standard sake, and then you will need to make a square compost. So therefore, you need 4 pegs for just setting up your pile, and then you need small sticks like these ones here that you're going to just put beneath where you're going to be making your compost, because then that will create enough passage of air beneath to make the compost begin to decompose very, very well. You measure 1.5 from one peg to the other with a measuring tape, and you peg them down 4 pegs, like we can see from this point. It's 1.5, 1.5, 1.5, and 1.5. After you've selected you've chosen your site and you've made your pegging, and then you put your sticks. You need to water where you're going to make your compost. So you put water now. So there's water that is being put on the site where we're going to make the compost, so that there is moisture to create bacteria to be active in order for them to work very well on the compost. So we need to water the place. After we've finished with the watering, we need to begin with the first materials that we need to put in, and we're going to start with green materials, and then we begin to progress step by step in the making of the compost. So I invite the team so that we can start the process, so that you see how the compost is made. We can start with green material. So every material that is used in making the thermocompost must be dipped into the drum. It must be wet. Because the reason the material should be wet is for easy access of the bacteria that work on the compost to begin to operate. So water is the key ingredient for that process to work very well. So, guys, let's go. Let's go for it.
Thermocompost takes about 8 weeks to make. It takes more work, but will be weed, seed, and pathogen free. First, lay some sticks down across the square to allow oxygen to reach the bottom of the compost. Gradually build the compost in layers, starting with dry materials. Dunk them in water until they are saturated and then place them in the bottom of the square. Fill the square with dry materials to approximately 20 centimeters deep. Next, use green materials. Again, dunk them in the water until saturated and put on top of the dry materials until approximately 20 centimeters deep. Next is the manure. It is best not to dunk manure in water but to put it in a wheelbarrow and mix with water, ensuring it is all wet. Then spread a layer on top of the green material. Next, add a layer of woody material on top of the manure. Continue to build the pile to the desired height of 1.5 meters. This volume of compost, if made correctly and of the right quality, should easily be able to sustain a half hectare of maize. You now must be patient and wait a few days for the temperature to rise above 55 degrees Celsius and for it to remain above the temperature for at least 3 days. A length of 10 mm round bar at least 1.2 meters long is perfect as a makeshift thermometer. A piece of 8 gauge wire would also work. Insert this rod or wire into your compost so that the end is in the center of the pile from all sides. Leave the rod there and check it every day. If you grab the end of the rod and are not able to continue holding it, that means the compost is definitely in the required zone. If the rod is very hot but you're able to hold it without letting go, then it may be just over the bottom of the zone at 55 degrees Celsius. If the rod is warm but not very hot, it is probably between 35 degrees Celsius and 55 degrees Celsius. If the rod feels cooler than your hand, then the temperature is less than 35 degrees Celsius. It should already be clear in your mind that compost must remain in the desired temperature zone for at least 3 days before you turn it. This means that turning is temperature dependent, not time dependent. For those intent on trying to achieve the best results possible, check every day and decide when to turn your pile accordingly. Turning is useful because it stops the pile from overheating. It resupplies the pile with oxygen. It allows for more moisture to be added. It allows outside materials to move to the center. First, lay some sticks down across the square to allow oxygen to reach the bottom of the compost. The easiest way for you to attack your pile, especially at the first turn, is with a pick. The materials by day 5 or 6 will not have decomposed very much yet and will be strongly matted together. Dig at it with a pick and pull the material down into the ground. Here you can use a fork to loosen it up before applying it to the new pile. If you suspect that you should add more water, do a squeeze test to determine if necessary. Continue in the same manner until the pile has moved to its new location. It is important to be diligent and continue to turn your pile until the process is complete. If you do not, several things can go wrong. The compost may overheat and kill your bacteria. The compost may run out of oxygen and go anaerobic. The compost may run out of moisture and cool down too soon.
Compost has been appreciated so much in the communities where we are working, both in Mkushi and Serenje. Way back in 2018, with a few farmers, a few farmer groups that we're working with, more or less about 7 to 8, but currently we have about 50 of them. And with the journey that we've had, we see a number of farmers improving in their productivity. I mean, we have one person, Perez, from Chimbofwe, where the whole program started from, who's been making compost ever since the program started. His yields are increasing almost every year on the same piece of land as he does crop rotation. And so we've seen it's really working. Say that from last year compared to this year, last year we had almost probably about 20% of all our farmers are doing compost, but now we are way above, somewhere like 40-50% of our farmers already made compost because they've seen the value of compost and vis-a-vis the cost of fertilizers, which is a challenge, and also just their land, which they feel should be an inheritance for those coming after them if they kept it well. So compost is really helping out into that transfer of inheritance on the land properties of their soils.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode and learned one way that you can bring life back to your soils. Feel free to leave a comment below or visit us at our website, foundationszambia.org.